Okay, today we're going to look at a new find that's been found up here in upper northeast Kazakhstan area near a real small village or city, if you will, known as Toktamys. It's been pretty hard to find. I've tried it with myself with Google Maps and trying to look down onto it, and I'm guessing the pictures that I'm getting to look at are not real recent, perhaps revealing where the recent excavation is being done at, because that usually shows up quite a bit. Anyhow, what we're looking at is a pyramid that's been found here, and there's something unique about it. And of course, you know me, I've done this a few times to some of these sites, and especially the Tasta sites where I jump the gun. It seems like if we can find out anything, or here it is, hey, there's something new and interesting, I'll try to make a video about it. Because depending on the size of the dig and so on, and what they find and how much that slows them down and other effects, after the original finding of it, it may be a year and a half, it could be years before they come out with a full final thing. And a lot of times when they do this, they try to put out something within about 8 months or a year, because they feel like they have the site at least to a point that they can give you that information. But sometimes these sites, well, like Göbekli Tepe was, once they started going into this, it's just everywhere and so expansive that if they waited for something like I'm talking about, we're talking about it'd be 2040, 2050, and they've really slowed down on the dig in that point and tried to make it an archaeological site that you can go and visit and see actually happening, as opposed to going through it, though meticulously, and seeing the actual dating span that could very radically change. Although it looks like it has a standpoint and it all makes sense, we could see it coming to a much more recent time before its full burying, and also we could find it going back to an older time. But because in most of these sites they have already the carbon dating and things and all correlate to a certain time, it looks like it fits to that. If we only had that one site, that would be something. In fact, it's still tallied just by itself alone as the most incredible archaeological site, all these things. But most people don't know that there's at least 16 sites that they found that hook it up that actually make it into a giant empire at a time. Before, well, coming out of the Younger Dryas, 10,000 BC. It's really put archaeology on its ear, but strangely we don't hear about incredible finds like this sparsely, if ever, in the news or any articles like that. You have to be kind of in the little field and have a bunch of feelers out for anything that shows up new to even get a grasp upon this. So hopefully you can see that there's a river system running down through it, kind of diagonally, headed right towards it, and then it curves around. There are other lakes and stuff that are surrounding this, and this is the steppe area that's here. But ironically, what's been found is a steppe pyramid, and they're excavating it out now. So let's try to take a look here at least what I can show you. I'm real limited on pictures. Literally, they only put out 3 or 4 pictures of this thing, and then trying to find other, and then look on maps and things like that, trying to give you an idea. But it's somewhere near here on Google Maps. And with a couple of the pictures, I look at it, and you can see some type of V-ish like structures of mountains surrounding a steppe area where they're looking at. And of course, that's point of view. You could look back over your shoulder and it'd be nothing. Or if you're back over your shoulder, there was other mountains there, all of a sudden it would start figuring out where we're actually at on this type of map. And this Toktamys, which is pinned here, is really this city, which is surrounded my little pointer that's here. There's also another little village called Bestamak that's near here. Strangely, there's a lot of looks like terraced formations that are all done here. A giant square formation that's way out here. Don't know what that is. And some other things while you look around. Other times you can see things like down here where it looks like a terracing type of crop growing or so on too. You look at this here and it's really not that green. You wouldn't believe it, but just a few thousand years ago, this place was quite a lot greener than it is. It, along with the Sahara eating up Egypt, that we all are aware of, where there's Gobi Desert and other types, things like this, in a land that you can see the scouring on all the mountains that are over here, just in this area here, and that there was a lot of runoff by rain that was going through here. And of course we're talking about a river valley situation, which seems to be where the heralds of civilization concentrated, though in many different places. But here you can see that river running just down through it right here, and it's pretty interesting. But again, we can't really find it so much, but you can see there are rock outcroppings just behind this. And what this is a step pyramid, but strangely, other than actually just being a step pyramid that we're all familiar and we have in our mind with a four-sided pyramid, and that concept that we have, that's pretty much like a four-sided dice if you've ever seen one, or a series of triangles hooked together with a square bottom on it. But this one is hexagon shaped, and that's called a hexacone whenever you take and build a pyramid type thing out of a hexagon. So it has a somewhat octagon is stop sign shape, but somewhat similar to that, more than a squared off pyramid, if you're getting the gist of it. And the one length here, which I'm sorry, I'm not exact on this, and hopefully in a few months there'll be something a lot more out of it, and some pictures, because what's really needed here is like a drone flyover and looking down upon it and stuff like that. It's amazing, if you had a little drone like that and tried to fly over and take a look at it, you'd probably realize, well, there's a structure right over here too, because there's this squared off stuff and so on. So they're liable to find a whole lot more. In a lot of these cases, they don't want to bring very much attention to it, because if they do, and they're in between and off seasons and things like that, there might be looters or people, and seeing this idea might look around up under this other mound and see what's under there, because this was buried up under a tell or a mound, just like Göbekli Tepe and all these other sites that conspicuously are just modern showing up. The four corners of this, or no, not four corners on it, but the hexagon corners that this has on it has big, larger stones, which are totally different type than what they built the walls and the structures out of here. One wall shows it to be about 8 to 10 foot tall compared to a person, and then the giant stones there could be as high as like 16, 18 foot. But it looks like it's been somewhat knocked down or destroyed, or fell in some way in some parts of the walls, while the other structure, or the bottom parts of each one, are well shown. And then there's a gap in between there of about 13 meters. Wonder if that's 12 in one step. On the step pyramids, we're finding out here in the steps. Wrap your head around that one. But then there's another stagger off of that, and because it's built into a tail, one wonders if the one you're trying to call the outer perimeter here, if there's not another one not out from it, but below at that same distance, because the other walls leading up seem to have that same appearance to them. And so they've come out with this, and here the archaeologists that are working on it. A man here which looks somewhat Mongol ethnicity, and then other children from the area that they're utilizing. And everybody thinks they're coming out and doing some kind of Indiana Jones thing, but really you're going to be spending all weekend digging at this one spot that's in your view here. You're not taking big excavators. It's a real slow, meticulous thing. You can see the kids and the ethnicities here. It looks like a little Mongolian mix with a few of these, and the other one showing blonde hair still in the area, and so on. So this is of that mixed type of area that we're looking at, and where people have a connection to that. But here he is trying to show and describe how they're supposed to be digging this thing out, and the meticulousness of it, and so on. And only a few statements have been said here, and again a few pictures. And if I double up on the pictures because there's only 3 or 4 total off of it, please forgive me. But in that idea, this Eurasian National University scientist has discovered an ancient pyramid. The step pyramid was built with great precision. It is hexagonal. There are 13 meters and 8 rows of stones between each face. The longest of the wall, the length of the wall of the one that we were looking at, I think, because they're showing a picture and saying a thing, is 42 meters. But I don't even know if that's the second or third level, or trying to be the outer perimeter, or the outer perimeter known so far. But it has this staggered step on it. And again, it's not just a triangle set of pyramids, but it's some of the hexagons. It's a very sophisticated, complex structure with several circles in the middle also. So I'm not sure exactly what they mean by that, and if they mean down in the body of it excavated, or if they're actually referring to on the top of it, like a dais or a temple, or like the ziggurats in Sumeria, which isn't too far away. But we can see these connections here going with this. And building styles and structures. Conspicuously, but maybe not if you've been with me for a while or know about things in the area, the exterior walls of the structure of this complex are dominated by images of various animals, especially horses. And in that concept, we realize who and where we are actually at, and that this pushes the boundaries a little bit on that idea that's there. Now, I believe this is an earlier picture and they have it to another level by now, but I'm unsure. But you can also see that there's this valley situation and this flat step that they built this at, that's surrounded by these little crest of mountains here. And if we were able to get a 360 of those mountains, we'd probably be able to pinpoint it much easier. Although hopefully coming out with other new videos and pictures of this place as it gets more excavated, there'll be a little bit more precise showing on the map. I feel again that the reason that they don't do that too much is because worry of looting, and that there might already be found other sites that are just near there. It's kind of like the Göbekli Tepe thing. Whenever they go, well, what's up under that hill right there? In fact, some of those I've shown just recently with Saberg Tepe are really built up under a place where people are living now as a village, and they use some of the stone to build their houses, but luckily it's a little bitty small village, and the place that they're looting upon didn't really get that much affected. But this site again is shown to be right in this area of Kazakhstan. So a little bit pushing up out of the steppes towards China we have there, but luckily it's within the border as well. There's no problem of this being excavated by these people, but there's apparently a multi-team going on with this idea. And there's a whole lot of stonework shown in these things, but then also see in the back left hand corner right there up under E and U, it looks like there's a little village just right there. So this is not really very much different than a Göbekli Tepe idea, except for instead of being Stonehenge circle type rings, is a pyramid. Now the wicked thing here is that it's built on a hexagon shape, so they call that a hexacone. Now might be a good time to take a look at what that looks like really and give you a better idea. If you just go to DuckDuckGo and look up hex pyramid, you'll end up seeing these different representations, and hopefully with these 3D representations here you get kind of an idea of what's going on here, where this shape is shown through here, or looking down upon it here. So it was a step pyramid, but built in these shapes that are right here, using on a hexagon shape rather than a regular square. Now, I've shown you before where these same people, not too far from here, there are other sites like Arkham and other sites that really show they're using sacred geometry, and also it has hooked up to astrotheology and a lot of other connections that we go with. And I think this is going to show the same thing too. At this point, they haven't even said if it is a north-south declination or if it's hooked up to any lines or if there's anything else to it other than that. Again, this is just a preliminary thing, but one could probably get an idea of what this looked like. Although a lot of these they show to be a very high pointed cone, this would have been something that's a little more flattened. Here's a good look at what a hexacone looks like. And because it's got the lines on it, maybe you can get the idea that it's like step, 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 and then flat on top. And I believe flat on top is the top cut off, much like you would think of on a dollar bill or the ancient ziggurats and so on. And apparently there's some circles hooked up to that. But I don't know if they're up on top or the idea there that they have, and that's what we're looking at in the pictures. Or if because it's all eroded down and what we're looking at is what's left of it, and the circles are hidden within this. So a lot of exciting thoughts come to mind, and you try to get different ideas on what we're looking at. And I have myself, of course, here, but there's not enough info to really get it. It just says that it's a kind of a pyramid type of thing, and it's a step pyramid. Something more like this here too that you can see, but instead of being smooth-sided and different colored lines that go there, it would be a step, 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 step. To be real forthcoming, I'm not even sure how many steps they have excavated at this point, because they are that ambiguous about the whole situation. I can, by what they've said in the two different pictures that we've looked at, discern that it's at least 3, and really 4 if we count ground level, which is apparently still way up under the dirt that's there. And so there's got to be another one and another one and so on. And looking down upon this thing, it would actually look like you're looking like down upon spider web, if you will. Only instead of being somewhat wibbly-wobbly, this thing looks like it was extremely precisely made, as the guy said. It's one of the only statements we've got so far is that it's well made and well known. And this is not alone. We are literally less than 100 miles away from Shenzhen and all of these pyramids that, anybody remember CFAPS? Passed away a couple of years ago. Well, CFAPS made a video showing that he had found over 180, and then it went to 200 and something just through that valley that's there. So when we look at Egypt and we talk about the Valley of the Kings, and there's tens of tombs that are there are hundreds of pyramids, all in what we call China today. But oddly, if we look into it, they predate China being in the area of China. And so we get this gem set. In fact, here's one right here that exactly matches the idea of a hex pyramid or a hexacone. And so this is what it looked like. One would think of it as perhaps being a beacon for travelers and so on, maybe in the old ancient Silk Road, before the Silk Road. Preliminary dating, by the way, comes out to putting this at a little over 4,000 years old, or over 2,000 BC. But again, they haven't even gotten down to the level where they can get a correct assessment of what that is. And then we'd have to look at places around there, because it didn't just pop up like popcorn, and see if we can figure out where they quarried from and so on. And then in those endeavors, I've got the stinking suspicion that they're going to end up finding out there's another little bump over here. And if we go through this valleyway right down through here, there's another one there and another one there. Well, what if we keep going? Well, we end up in China, what we call China today, and then there's a whole lot of these pyramid things that are here. It's described as the only one in this area right here that they know of so far. Because again, it's apparently done in a Göbekli Tepe type of way and all sunk in here. I don't even know how this was originally supposedly discovered and so on. But you can see some extremely flat and square stones that are all built into here. And then just piles of stones here. And this is not indicative of what they are saying in there and then what's shown in the other wall. So there's got to be some refuse going on here. No telling what they're going to figure out once we go through all of it. It's kind of exciting, and again, so I'm jumping the gun on here. And well, I hope next week or 2 weeks from now they don't come up with a picture essay on it. If they do, I'll make another video on it, of course. But I have the feeling this will be 8 months. They'll send out a little bit more type of stuff and da-da-da and what we think about it so far. And then they'll excavate it over the next year and a half. And then we'll get a decent idea and then to overlook. Kind of like they did on Göbekli Tepe and some of these other sites that are being shown. And it's got to be done real slow and meticulously, so in doing so, it's got to be done so slow you almost can't see it happening. So this is not actual depictions from there, but this is depictions from all around there in the old Bactria region and Proto-European steppes. And they're saying that these walls are covered with these glyphs that are like these that are here, where they're showing ancient horsemanship. And they're saying, well, this has got to be the same people that are here because of commonalities and stuff going on here in the sacred geometry of pyramids. And again, the big standout there is it's not even a common squared off pyramid going up, where we've already found ones like that. But actually, it's a hex pyramid. It's a step pyramid. And it's in the steppe region that's here. I'm pointing at the Hindu Kush mountains that are here, but you can see right above that is the Tarim Basin. And then there's Xinjiang and Tingshan, where China itself is bulging out into this area, but is surrounded by the steppes, and you can see steppe here and steppes and so on. And this place is right up in this area. And it's showing us a hex-shaped pyramid structure, which I've got another video, by the way, of a burial, which is a little bit different, or maybe not, than this one that's here, that I did a video on way back in March, it seems like now, a few months back, and just haven't put it out due to Cleopatra thing and all these other things that have come out, and trying to push out some of these videos I have, and it's got a few pages back now, and then, well, I forgot about it, until all of a sudden this came up, and you go, well, you know, I've got another thing that shows a pyramid-shaped thing, and it's also just a kind of a blurb in the mound that's showing around in this area. And luckily, this is finally bringing some attention to it once we've all gotten off the Aryan concept and started calling these people Proto-Indo-Europeans. The problem with this all is that there all has to be a shunning all the way through it, or they end up making connections like that spider web that I originally talked about and still occasionally mention, of the way things hook up and where people went to people. Just like you can look at a map and you'll see a bunch of roads that'll go around and connect to places. You can find people having certain artifacts that also connects to places. Or sometimes nowadays we even have their mummies and so on like that to connect up to it. So this is pretty interesting. But it's not just horses that have been found there too. It said and camels, but apparently it's sticking on that idea. And this is a valley much like where it's actually at. And you can see these horsemen type people that are living in this area, coming through this type area. But you see this little mound that's out here, and this little rubble of rocks, and then this mound that's here. This is something that's in a place like that. And just kind of hidden away and mushed up under a side hill or so on. In fact, hey, the hill that these guys are walking over on their horses looks actually more conspicuous. This hill right here looks more conspicuous than those that were looking over, knowing that they look kind of conspicuous. Now they do, due to the fact that we know of Göbekli Tepe and all these things, but what's up under that little mound there? What's up under that little hill? We have a lot of mounds in America too, but we've made all these laws against it and all these things about trying to figure out how it all works out, or even if there's connection between people that are there now and people that were there a long time ago. But they don't want any of that. It keeps ruining that idea that the world's only 4,000 years old and stuff, and it's like, look dude, it's way past that. Just go ahead and let's freeform it here and figure out what really happened. Well, yeah, but the Aryan thing and all that, oh man, ever since World War II, that's been a nightmare with people. But you'll find that all the way up until then, which is what kind of led into that thing that happened at World War II, that was well known and established and stuff. So now we call it Proto-Indo-Europeans. Their connections. And funny, we're looking at horsemen running through this area because this is the area known for people that started off horses. And again, there's camels too shown on the walls of this in some places. And you can tell that those bigger standpoints on the corners there are squared off and well faced, whereas these others look like they were lock-a-block together in that honeycomb pattern, but had been just knocked down and kind of piled up down. Horses have a lot to do with what ended up making civilization, actually. It gave it a way to go and do something. It put the idea of where you could go in a few days and back to something much farther away. It allowed people to hook up a wagon to it and to go that way, to literally uproot themselves and migrate all over the place. It's an amazing thing. This actually, for thousands of years, was the car. And it was a living creature that you developed a bond with. It's pretty damn incredible. I have an affinity for horses. And up until the time of my grandfather, everybody got a horse when they were growing up. Kids, everybody had a horse. But these engines and these cars that run off fuel and so on like that, and now we're going on the idea of electric, the concept of the power that these things have inside of them is still called horsepower. For a good reason. I think they drew this guy a little bit too small here that's sitting on the back of this horse, because he looks like that horse must be a giant. But this is the people that are associated with this site, and of course all these others that are drawn through this area, and sites that are not on that map we were looking at there. And there are connections, as I've shown repeatedly, with blue-eyed type people which tried to go along with this Proto-Indo-European Aryan concept, and you can find them in the earliest of Egyptians when they come up with the idea of building step pyramids out of mastabas, and then made actually the Great Pyramid. This is nowhere near that size, but it apparently is intricately built, concepted, and it's actually a hex pyramid. Preliminary dating says it's over 2000 BC. Wonder if we get a few more 100 years on that, if it rivals the dating of the ancient pyramids of Giza. But I've already shown you one in Greece as we know it here. There used to be a couple of them there that they talk about, but there's one that most of it's left now built out of sacred geometry, shapes, everything. And it's not as big as the Great Pyramid, of course, but it does predate the Great Pyramid, showing you that there were pyramids that predate the pyramids. Also an idea of maybe how Proto-Europeans had this and its variations of themes all over the place. For I've shown you a few pyramids across the Aegean Sea and the Mediterranean and all over the place that don't usually get talked about. Nobody ever just puts them together and go, here's a pyramid, look at that, here's a pyramid, look at that, here's a pyramid, here's a pyramid, here's a pyramid, here's a pyramid. Everybody always fixates on Egypt, when there are quite a few in Samaria too. There are connections that hook up to that too. Anyhow, horses really played a large standpoint in this, and they have in all of civilization. But there can be civilization without horses. Horses were not in Egypt, as we just talked about, until the Hyksos showed up. And then they all of a sudden had parade ponies, the wheel, and things like that. So there were civilizations that could do much incredible things, not even having all of the components together. Once we put all those components together, well, it didn't take too long. It's pretty amazing. Just a few generations ago, everybody was still on horses, but once we get into the Industrial Revolution and come out of that, believe it or not, now we're spacemen. It's pretty incredible. It's kind of an apexing, kind of going up that pyramid, but there appears to be just warping up there. And in that amazing warping that's up there, I still, as a person, can actually feel that we're holding ourselves back. That the space program kind of ended there for 20, 30 years, and now we're kind of getting back going with it in an idea. And I remember sitting there watching Johnny Carson, and they were telling us that by the year 2000 we were going to be on Mars. And then it turned into 2005, and now it turned well, if Elon Musk does it instead of us. Crazy. But we're at a pretty far reach here in time, and looking at civilization, talking about spaceships, all the way back to an old hex pyramid that's been found here. It's over 4,000 years old. It's a step pyramid found in the steppes. Let me know what you think down below. And again, I'm jumping the gun here. I've only been able to show you a few different pictures and then show you what a hexacone actually looks like. I can only show you this one wall, but you can see the well-worked stone here on the right versus that interwoven wall that's done there, and that gives you an idea of what all the walls in this look like. Again, I can't wait to find out how many steps there are into it, and the true size of it, the way it looks. But apparently this wall right here is 42 yards or 42 meters long. But it looks like there's one done here to the left that's circumference is this too, so that makes no sense. Unless they just wanted to point out, hey, here's this good wall that we found, it's 42 meters. More will come out on this, and if you've been watching my site, of course, you'll remember back then, you'll be like, oh yeah. By the way, again, I have another one with a burial that's showing you a pyramid shape that's been going on too. So there's another pyramid. It's not too far from here. And I'm guessing that I'll put it out before this, so whenever you notice that, and then you hear me say this now, you'll be like, yep. Like, share, and subscribe. We're hitting 9,000 subs here, so make sure that bell's clicked. Make sure you're subbed. Peace.